Hello, everybody, and welcome into another playoff preview show here at the Hockey Writers, our last one as we get ready for the playoffs to get started. You may be watching as the playoffs have started, but this series won't be starting until Monday. So I've got Brian Swane, Raz and Brian here covering the Oilers and Kings for the fourth time now. We've got the Oilers Kings in the first round, and all three previous times the Oilers came out of it. We'll see if that's the same thing this time around, or if the Kings will finally break that and actually win a series and go to the second round after facing the Oilers. But Raz, how's it going?
Oh, not bad. It's the best time of year coming up. So, just getting predictions done, the bracket done, fantasy playoff pools, it's all the hype right now. So, yeah, I'm doing good.
All right. And Brian, how's it going?
Good. You and I were talking right before we came on air here that how long the season feels like, and I'm just ready to get to the playoffs.
Yes, I think that's a sentiment everywhere. This last week of the season has been a bit of a drag. And so the playoffs getting started is, I think, everyone wanting to happen. So let's get started with this preview. And Raz, I'll start with you with the Kings. Their journey to the playoffs, I mean, they've made the playoffs the last few years, as we've said. They've played the Oilers the last three times. But they can't get out of the first round. This year, they, of course, changed their coach. Didn't change their coach, but their coach was the first time throughout the whole season to be have his hooks in. So what has been their journey like to this point?
Yeah, I think they did start off pretty strong, and it was kind of like the same sort of momentum all the way through. There wasn't really that point in the season like last year where they went on like this tremendous losing streak that kind of, stopped momentum or dropped them in the standings in any way. And I think you're seeing consistency, and that's the biggest thing I think that the Kings haven't had in the last three seasons is, more guys. You're seeing more from more guys, and then obviously everyone seems to be bought into Jim Hiller's systems, and that it's that continued sort of defensive first mindset, but moving away from the 1-3-1, we're seeing a little bit of an offensive upside from them. You're scoring more goals than they did last year. Still, while, playing that defensive style, it's hard to score against them. They're very stingy. And obviously got Kemper coming in back to Los Angeles in his second stint with the Kings. And, he's putting up Vezina caliber numbers. So I think it's just kind of been a steady progression with the Kings instead of, starting off strong or ending strong, but it's just kind of like a gradual ladder in a way.
Sure. I mean, the thing is, like you said about the defensive game, it's still it's their bread and butter, but they have been able to score and do so pretty well. I mean, they're scoring over 3 goals a game, a little over 3 goals a game. I mean, there's some of their guys that are having some good seasons as well. And you mentioned the goaltender. I mean, Darcy Kemper, his numbers are off the charts. We're talking earlier about Hellebuck's numbers, and he's right there with them. So, I mean, he's maybe a bit of an underrated guy talking about the Vezina Trophy. He might end up being a finalist, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about the 3 goals in a game, and actually every single time the Kings have scored 3 or more goals in a game, they haven't lost in regulation. So it's kind of like that, when that offensive is kicking in along with the defensive game, it's like a win is, almost certain. So I think that also has been gelling more and more as the season has gone on as well.
And that's recipe for success in the playoffs, right? Good defensive game and scoring, the key goals. So we'll see if the Kings can move forward and keep that identity in the playoffs too. Yeah. All right, Brian, shifting to the Oilers, coming into the season, of course, made it to the Stanley Cup final last year. So there was big expectations that this is, they take the next step and win the cup. Of course, the big guys are still had great seasons, but injuries just, my gosh, this last month or so has just been hell for the injury list for the Oilers. But they did make it. Unfortunately, didn't get home ice in this one. They were really close to potentially doing it. But what has been the Oilers' journey like to this point?
This one has been all over the map. There's been all kinds of ups and downs, and never seems to be any shortage of drama in the city, even though it may not necessarily be worthy of drama. But, I mean, the Oilers, as has kind of been their deal the last few years. They got off to a slow start again and then really got cooking, and they were rolling in really kind of December and January into the beginning of February. We're racking up the wins, and at one point they'd actually taken the division lead. And then maybe not surprisingly, coming out of the Four Nations break, again, they kind of came out flat, and then they ran into, as you mentioned, all the injury problems, and it's basically just kind of been a scramble to make it to the finish line of the playoffs here and make sure they locked down a spot. They were able to get the third seed in the division, and they've been fairly I don't know if I want to say, well, cautious. We'll use that with bringing the guys back, some of the injured guys back over the last couple weeks of the season, and a lot of guys that, if they had needed to, probably would have played, but they've been able to, because they did lock up the last playoff spot or the third seed about a week and a half ago, they've been able to give some of their extra guys a bit of extra rest. Guys like Zach Hyman that might have had to be pushed back into the lineup, Wallman. So, you'll hopefully be seeing for them a very close to a full complement of their roster ready to go for game one.
Which is good. I mean, the thing is how percentage-wise health, I mean, no one's 100% healthy at this point of year. So, exactly. I mean, we'll see how effective everyone is. But we all know with Draisaitl, he seems to be able to play injured and still is an elite player. So probably won't be a problem for him.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and Draisaitl's another guy too who, probably would have come back if they really need, if they needed points in game 82 to make the playoffs, but they've been able to rest him for a little bit too. And, he's a guy who was might have been the favorite to win MVP. I think he's kind of dropped out of that conversation because he's had to miss so many games over the last few weeks, but, might all be a blessing in disguise that all these guys have been able to get a lot of rest, because there's been a lot of miles put on this team in the last, really since, the last 2 years with their run right to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that might be a thing. Maybe it's good that they're forced to sit out.
Yeah.
Get some rest right there, too. All right, well, speaking of players, Raz, I mean, the Kings they've got quite a bit of depth, even though, their defense is the biggest. I mean, their team defense is the biggest storyline. Who should everyone be watching in this series for the Kings?
Yeah, I think, you still have your guys like Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, kind of the mainstays on the Kings that have been sort of their engine for the past few years. But I really want to talk about the emergence of Quinton Byfield, who, has given the Kings that sort of center depth that they were lacking in the last, 2-3 seasons. They brought in Dubois last year, to kind of help with that depth, and they thought they had their three centers who could go up and down the lineup, play key matchups, and obviously we know that experiment didn't go so well, and so you have Quinton Byfield go back to his natural position of center this season, and he had a slow start, he was getting the chances, he was playing well, but he just couldn't seem to hit the net, or that finishing touch wasn't there. And in his last 31 games, he's had 31 points. So he's at a point per game to finish the year. And I think he is one of the key difference makers for the Kings. I'll also say Kevin Fiala, who I think the Kings are getting the most out of this season as far as, his tenure with the Kings. He's potted a 35 goals this season, which is his career high. So his offense is really clicking this season. And it just adds another one of those. You need skill guys to beat the Oilers as well, especially with what they have on the other end. And so, it's good to see Fiala, Byfield stepping up, along with depth guys like Warren Fogle, who, obviously was an Oiler for the last few years. And he set a career high in goals and points as well this season. And you have LaFerriere, who doubled his production. So you're having the kind of the young guys, breaking out of their shells combined with that veteran presence. And I mean, that's what you're seeing where the Kings landed in the standings. So there's a lot of key players to watch, but I will go with Kevin Fiala and Byfield as the two key players.
And Byfield had 3 goals in the season series too. So he's had some success against the Oilers this season. So has Warren Fogle. He had 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists. So he could be a bit of a thorn in the Oilers side, being an Oiler there too. All right, Brian, for the Oilers, I mean, we all know the big guys that everyone's going to be watching, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, have all performed great in the playoffs the last couple of years. They've been the biggest point producers, I think, in the NHL, especially Hyman. He's been just a machine. Who should everyone be watching for the Oilers this time?
Yeah, I mean, if the Oilers are going to go on any kind of a run, they're going to need to get depth production. So I'm going to pick a couple of guys that are their two biggest free agent signings last offseason being Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson. They're both kind of unique stories here. Jeff Skinner, of course, as everyone knows, famously had the longest playoff drought in NHL history before finally 15 seasons in, he's finally getting to play his first experience. So, I mean, no one knows how there's no track record for how he's going to perform. This guy could be the greatest playoff performer of all time. He had a bit of a disappointing season, I think, or I should say probably produced below expectations. I think at this stage in his career, getting up to where he is in age now, I think he's 33. He's on the downside of his career. He's not a 30, 40 goal scorer anymore. But that's one guy I think that's just really intriguing to watch just because of his backstory. Mm-hmm. The other one would be Victor Arvidsson, who I mentioned. He spent the last few seasons with the Kings and went with the old you can't beat him, join him approach and worked with the Oilers. And who knows now? Once maybe he'll get knocked out.
Yeah, might not be the greatest decision for him.
Yeah, but he's been improving as season goes on. He's another one who probably did not produce to what was expected of when the Oilers signed him in the offseason. But he's been playing better. He's been scoring a bit more recently and has become a good presence on the second line. And when everyone's healthy, him and Draisaitl and Vasily Podkolzin have really been a really dynamic and fun to watch line that causes all kinds of havoc for the Oilers. So, he's a guy who knows that rink. He knows who's on the other side. He knows what it's all about. So, I mean, I think on both sides of the coin here with Warren Foegele and Victor Arvidsson, we're potentially looking at some revenge factors going both sides. And that's going to be really fascinating to watch because Foegele has been awesome against the Oilers this year. Mm-hmm. And that was someone they probably shouldn't have one of a few players they probably shouldn't have let get away, and they did.
Yeah, that's a big one. He has been really good. Like you mentioned, Raz, with the how much he's scored this season and career year, right? So he's a really key part of the team now too. All right, speaking of, let's talk about keys to victory for the Kings. I mean, they have home ice, best home record in the Pacific, I believe, in the Western Conference too. They've only lost, was it 6 times?
Yeah, 6 times at home ice, yeah.
So that could be a big one. What are the keys to victory for the Kings to get out of the first round for the first time in a while here?
Yeah, I think obviously we've been, we waited forever to record this just because of this, but they finally got it. And for the first time they have home ice. So, and usually when we talk about home ice in the playoffs, it's not that big of a deal. Like we've seen teams on the road, close out games, and it's proven that it's not that important. But I will say that if any team can prove the importance or take advantage of that, it's a team that's only lost 6 times on home ice. Like they've been so dominant that it's hard to believe that everything they've done on home ice this season just cancels out because it's the playoffs. So I will say that's the biggest one. I think the other one is, obviously we talked about it a little earlier, but Darcy Kemper. It's the first time since Jonathan Quick where they have a solid, true number 1 goaltender who can be relied on. And he has proven his reliability throughout the season, bailing the team out when needed. Obviously, we know the Kings are that defensive style team, so they don't have many of those relapses in their own zone. But when they do, especially early in games, Kemper's been there to shut the door. Another victory so it's kind of weird because obviously the penalty kill is huge with how good the Oilers' power play is. But I think the only other way to combat an Oilers power play like that is if the Kings are capitalizing on their power play as well. And that's probably the one area for the entire season that we could confidently say that they've been terrible in. They were ranked 5th worst in the league. And it wasn't until Andrei Kuzmenko joined the team at the trade deadline where we saw some improvement with the power play. They only scored, I think it was 1 goal or 1 game where they had more than 1 power play goal in a game before Kuzmenko. And after his addition, they did it 4 times. So we're seeing the power play, improve a little bit with him. I know you have a lot of history with covering Kuzmenko, so. But yeah, it's weird because you didn't think that he would come in and make that big of a deal, but he's been really well. He fit in really well, and he's collecting those points. So I think that's another key for the Kings is the power play as well.
Yeah, I mean, Kuzmenko, that's one thing he always did well on the power play. He's a big part of that. So I don't think he'll ever be that guy that was in Vancouver for the one season that we enjoyed here.
Right.
Where he had 76 points, and it's like, I don't know what happened. Everyone's just figured him out, I guess. But he is he is a very skilled player though. And he can add a lot to a team. So we'll see what he can do.
Right.
All right. Oilers. They have had success against the Kings. Like we said, they've won the last 3. But this is a different type of team, and they're going in with maybe some question marks. So what are the keys to victory for them? I mean, they had a ton of problems scoring against the Kings this season. Only scored 4 times. So
only 1 goal in the last 3 games against them. So
yeah. So what are the keys to win this series?
Yeah, I mean, you look at that and you think this is probably going to be a low-scoring series. And the Oilers, so I mean, looking at it from that perspective, and I think what was the great stat you had there? The Kings haven't lost when they give up or
scored 3 or more goals.
3 or 4 more goals, yeah. So, I mean, if that's the case, then the Oilers are going to have to, keep the goals down, and that kind of dovetails with exactly what I think the biggest key for the Oilers in this series, and that's goaltending. Goaltending has probably been their weakest spot this season. Stuart Skinner has not been who he was last season. Calvin Pickard's been solid in the backup role and has actually come in and played really well. Skinner was hurt recently, but he's Calvin Pickard. No one's expecting Calvin Pickard to backstop you to the Stanley Cup. So Skinner needs to be more like who he was last spring. That's going to be the key, and especially the Oilers, like you said, they have struggled to score against the Kings this year. Only 4 goals in 4 games, 1 goal in the last 180 minutes against them. Granted, the Draisaitl and McDavid were out for, I believe, at least 2 of those games.
I think they're out for the last 2.
Yeah. But still, you know what? The Oilers are going to need depth scoring to advance anyway. Right, it's not all going to be on those guys. Like someone down the lineup is going to have, whether it's Arvidsson, whether it's Skinner, Jeff Skinner, is going to have to do that. So, I mean, you can say that, well, they couldn't score, but look who wasn't on the team. But yeah, you know what? The Oilers are going to have to get goals from somebody else anyway if they're going to beat the Kings this year. So that to me is the key, and I think the fact that that's an absolutely incredible stat that the Kings haven't lost. When they scored more than 3 goals. That to me just puts it all in perspective, and I think really drives home how important it is going to be for the Oilers to get that depth scoring and limit how many goals the Kings put behind them.
For sure. I mean, and Arvidsson did have one of those goals, so maybe he did have one of those 4. Kasperi Kapanen and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Connor McDavid were the 4 goal scorers. In the season.
Well, 3 of those goals were way back. Like I think the first time they played each other was like November?
Yeah, it was early.
Yeah, it was early. Like they've scored 1 goal against him in the last 5 months.
Yeah.
So like
that's not good.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. All right. Now, Raz, you did mention big weakness. So we'll into our quick fire round here, and we'll start with biggest weakness you're worried about in the Kings game going in. That could potentially get them.
I was doing a little digging for an article, and I saw that when it's McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman together, they outscore their opponents by a ton. Like they're, I think, the second best line in the league. But I think that's their only line that can do that sort of damage. Like their goals for percentage is like 70 in the 70s, high 70s. And the Kings have 3 lines that are in the 70s as well. So I think that line matchup favors the Kings there. I just wanted to quickly put that out there before I, start talking about the weaknesses. But I think the one weakness, the biggest weakness for the Kings is the mental game. I don't want them to go into this series with having the last 3 years play any part in their mental game. And if they go in the series thinking that they can't beat the Oilers, and it's been year after year after year that they can't do it, then I think that's obviously it's gonna hinder their ability to win. But I think it's really just going out there and proving that they are the better team. I think the stats show that they are the better team, at least on paper. So for them, just go out there and play their game and not worry about the past.
That's going to be a big thing. I mean, especially if they get down early in the series and it was like, oh no, here we go again. We'll see. I mean, that can play a part, and there are a lot of players on this team that were part of all this. So it's not like there's a ton of guys that aren't here anymore. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if that plays a part in it. All right, Brian, you did mention the goaltending. Is that your one for this one, the biggest weakness coming in?
Yeah, I think so. It can be a strength at the same time too, right? Like it depends on who shows up. But I think a weakness has been, as it has been the story with this Oilers team all along in the McDavid era, is depth scoring.
Yeah.
And are they going to get that? They did not get that, as we talked about, head-to-head against the Kings this season. So that would be a big one. And I think just I don't know if I'd necessarily classify it as a weakness, but just the reason I think that, this might be the time that the Oilers just can't, just don't get past the Kings is just, all the injuries, all the miles that they've racked up. They've looked like a tired team. And coming down the stretch here. And, I don't know if they're going to be able to flip the switch and everything changes when the series starts on Monday, but they just look – they kind of look like they're out of gas right now, and we'll see. But that would certainly be something that I think just could be to their detriment.
And they have played a ton of hockey in the last few. Actually, even the playoffs before, they went quite far too. So.
They've played the last 4 seasons. The only team that's played more games, including playoffs, is in the NHL is the Panthers.
Yeah,
and obviously going back to the beginning of the last playoffs too. And that's not to make an excuse or anything, but I mean it's just that's the reality of how it is. And I think if you look in the history of the NHL, all the great teams, very few put together like 4 consecutive postseasons where they make extended runs. Even the very great teams, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Chicago, they almost all get knocked out in the first round at least once. And the Oilers have the last 3 years, they went to the conference finals, went to the second round, and of course last year the Stanley Cup finals. And I don't know. The stars seem to be aligning in the Kings' favor this year.
Well, that's going to be something to watch for sure. All right, Brian, I'll stay with you. X factors for the Oilers. I mean, you talk about the depth scoring. Could that be an X factor or someone in that bottom 6? Who are you looking at there?
I think, I'll throw another name I haven't really mentioned yet out there too, and that's Pud Colson, the guy quite well. I think, we talked about that in the season preview of how big he could be for the Oilers. And he hasn't scored a lot, only got 8 goals this season, but he has been a real impact player playing on Draisaitl's wing, and I just think he could really the Oilers don't have a lot of physicality. He's a guy who can get in there and kind of throw his weight around a little bit and make things happen. And then, potentially a couple guys that really, Evander Kane, if he's able to return. We're still not sure if he's going to be playing in the series at all, or he could be there for game 1. And Trent Frederick, who they traded for at the deadline or just before the deadline, and he's only played 6 minutes. He came back from injury, played a few shifts and then got hurt again. And those are both guys that bring an element to the game that the Oilers, don't have. And Kane has just been dynamite against the Kings these last 3 postseasons. So that would be a couple X factors for me, is who is going to be in the lineup.
Yeah, and that definitely, especially with Evander Kane. I mean, like you said, he's been pretty good against the Kings throughout here. So I think the Kings probably don't want him in the lineup. So
probably not. No.
Raz, what about you for X factors for the Kings?
Yeah, I think the top 2 are the ones I mentioned before, were Darcy Kemper and Quentin Byfield, just for the reasons we mentioned before. But I'll throw Andrei Kuzmenko into that list just because of the Kings. They're going to need to find offense, and if he's out there with Adrian Kempe and Ante Kopitar, they've shown that they can produce before. especially on the power play, which is something that needs to be clicking if they want to beat the Oilers. I will also throw an X factor to Warren Foegele, just because, as Brian mentioned earlier, just like Arvidsson, he's been on the other side. He knows the ins and outs of that locker room, what that team is all about, and maybe he knows something that the Kings have been, missing in their game plan from the last 3 seasons that can help them get over the edge.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, to see why are you winning?
Yeah.
Why do you want
exactly? Yeah.
All right. Series MVP, and this can be from either team, or you can pick one from either team. Brian, who is going to be the best player in this series? There's a lot of names to choose from that could potentially be that.
Man, I don't want to take the easy way out here and give you the obvious one. So I guess I'll go with a sleeper pick. Boy, you know what? No, actually, I'm not sure if there is a sleeper pick. You know what? If there is a series MVP on the Oilers, it's probably going to be Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. And on the other side, I think, we're probably looking between the pipes, where this series will be won or lost. So I don't know if there's somebody but that's the beauty of the playoffs, right? Like somebody can get hot for a few games and it could be Corey.
It's going to be the most random player. Yeah,
exactly. So, but yeah, no, I'm sorry. I got nothing. I'm going to have to go with the obvious picks for that one.
Yeah. Raz, you got, who do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to give the Kings MVP to Adrian Kempe. I think I haven't talked about him enough in this episode, but he's been that one consistent player in the past 3 seasons that has actually been able to consistently score against the Oilers and put up points in the playoffs. I think he's been their most consistent playoff performer. So I don't see how there's going to be a difference here, especially, 35 goals on the season. So it's not like he's had a down year or anything. So I think he's going to be the MVP, along with, like Brian said, Kemper. He's a big part of this team this year. And for the Oilers, it's a tough one because there's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and those two, they take over series. So it's hard to really give it to anyone other than those two. I think I'll give it to Draisaitl, though, just because the 50-goal season, and he's had lots of time to rest, so I'm sure he's ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, can't with Zach Hyman too. He's been dynamite throughout these last 2 playoffs, so he could potentially go off again too. All right, so let's do some bold predictions. And Raz, I'll start with you. I'll see if the last bunch of previews, the first person has not had one right away. So do you have a bold prediction right away here?
In what way? Like the series winning, or like what do you
anything
have in mind? Anything
that's bold. You
anything.
Could
okay.
Someone, it can be anything bold.
All right. Warren Foegele in double overtime in Game 6 wins the series for the Kings.
Ooh, in Game 6?
Game 6.
In Edmonton, eh? Wow.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Oh, that's bold. Okay.
That's bold, yeah.
You brought it. Yeah.
Go bigger, go home.
Yeah.
What about you, Brian? You got?
I don't know if this is even bold, but I think, and I probably, coming from the Edmonton standpoint, I probably shouldn't be saying this. My bold prediction is that for the first time in 5 years or 4 years, the Oilers are getting knocked out in the first round. I just, as we talked about, I just think there's so many factors working against them this year. But that would be something if they got knocked out on home ice. I'd like to think they can take this to Game 7, and that's where, the home edge that LA has.
Yeah, right.
Boy, yeah, I could totally see that, triple overtime. It's past midnight here, and just somebody comes off the end of the bench and breaks everybody's hearts. But hey, that's the beauty of the joy and pain of playoff hockey, right?
Yeah.
Anything can happen. I mean, this series, I don't know what to really say about it. It's going to be interesting to see if it's going to follow the same script as the last few years, or it's going to be a difference. But I think there's going to be a difference. It just seems like the Kings have a little bit more of a playoff type feel to me this season. So we'll see. Well, speaking on that, let's do our predictions. Now, you guys alluded to it a bit here. Brian, what do you think? Who's going to win this and how many games?
I'll go Kings in 7.
All right. Raz, what do you got?
Yeah, I got Kings in 6.
All right. So it's a longer series. I think it's going 7, and I'm going Kings in 7. Like I said, I think they've got a little bit more of the edge this time around, and the goaltending I think is going to be massive in this one. And Kemper has shown to be the better one throughout the season, and Skinner has not. So we'll see if he can become the Stuart Skinner of the playoffs, not half of the Canucks series, because he wasn't very good.
Yeah.
In that one. But until maybe game was 6 and 7, right? Because he won those 2. But
that was the full Stuart Skinner experience, that playoff series.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, this series, of course, gets started on Monday, and we'll see how it all goes. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Raz, for coming on, talking this series. It's like I say, if it follows the same script, we'll see if it does, because maybe next season we'll have a different matchup with the Oilers and Kings. It'll have play different teams, but we'll see who comes out of this one. Check out everything at thehockeyreports.com, but all the coverage of the Oilers and Kings as the series goes on, and check out the Substack and all of our social media channels as we go through the playoffs. But until our second round previews get going, we'll see you next time.